Hello and welcome to another episode of FinTech Focus TV with me, Toby. Today, joining you in the studio are Neil and Ollie, and we are here to talk Bondtape. How are you both?
Nice to meet you.
Likewise, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Listen, the whole conversation around the Consolidated tape has been raging for a couple of years now, becoming more and more prevalent. We met at the Fix event last time out. Again, it's not an agenda without the Consolidated tape being mentioned. That two companies here who are both very heavily involved in the whole process, and we're going to sort of explore that a little bit later on. So lots and lots to discuss. Everyone's favourite subject at the moment. We're going to get some answers to what's happening in the whole process. But before we do that, let's start with some intros. Ollie, give us a little bit of background to yourself and the company.
Oh, thanks, Toby. My name is Oliver Haste. I'm Chief Administrative Officer Designate at Bondtape. I'm also Head of Product at Propellant. And prior to this, so my career has always been in data product management, previously at Goldman Sachs for about a decade, and also actually looking a lot at MiFID II, which is one of the driving forces, well, the reason the Consolidated tape is being discussed.
Yeah, absolutely. And Neil?
I wish I was as straightforward as that. My career is a bit more checkered. So I spent a lot of time in the fixed income market on the trading, investment, on the buy side and sell side. Latterly at UBS, actually here in London. Then I transferred into the civil service in Ireland during the financial crisis for a couple of years. And then I went into FinTech. So I was COO of two FinTech companies. And for the last four and a half years, I've been working with Finborn on the Consolidated tape and leading the project there. In terms of my role, I'll be the CEO designate of Bondtape should we win one or both tenders, hence the designate bit.
Absolutely.
It's a very exciting opportunity. As you said, it's been around for a long time. I think when we started, we thought it would be a 2-year project. 4.5 years later, we're still here.
Yeah.
So it's gone on for longer than everyone thought.
As often these things do.
As with all of these slow trains, it's suddenly become a bullet train, and it is the top of people's minds now, and there is a lot of focus on it.
Absolutely. And I love that sort of slow train to bullet train, because it does feel like there's momentum that's picking up. And we talked there about Bondtape and designate positions and all this sort of stuff. We also talk about two companies who I think have done incredibly well in their own rights over the last couple of years. Talk to us about why that fusion happens and where that sort of collaboration happens as two businesses as well.
So I think Finborn has been around for about eight or so years. It really focuses on enterprise data management. EDM is sort of the core of what they do. They built up a very successful roster over the last number of years of leading global clients. They've done 2 fundraisers, a Series A and a Series B fundraise. And Finborn looked at this challenge around the Consolidated tape and thought about the fact that actually what we do in our enterprise data management for large clients like Northern Trust and for large clients like LSEG is exactly what the Consolidated tape means. In other words, taking data in different formats, standardizing it, normalizing it, and then applying analytics and filters to it. So we started in that project about 4 years ago, which was around the same time that Ollie and Vincent started Propellant. So we went in parallel tracks for the last 3-4 years. But last year we were looking at data quality, and we were working with a number of different trade associations, AFME, IFAM and BVI, and working with a company called Adamansia as well, who are well known in this market. And we were putting the report together, and then Vincent reached out to us and said, actually, we have the same interest in data quality that Finborn have. So out of those discussions, having known each other and having come across each other for a number of years, it was that really, if you'll pardon the pun, consolidated the discussions. And, having those conversations with the company that had looked at and managed to build a commercial model around accessing data for their clients and helping them service that led to a sort of grown-up conversation around, what are we looking at? Why are we doing it? Actually, can we collaborate to make it better? And it was sort of out of those discussions that we had with Vincent and Ollie and Charlie that this fusion came late last year, and we decided to coalesce around the Bondtape project. and really use that to sort of turbocharge both the focus on the CTP and I think what both companies thought that they could bring to the project overall.
Mm-hmm. I mean, specifically on the propellant side, you've actually already spoken to our co-founder and CEO, Vincent Grandjean, and I think he and I both argue that what Propellant Digital already does is a proto CTP. In fact, he worked a lot on MiFID II. That's some of my background, and actually did the job of the CTP, consolidating this information, making it useful, and having run that for a few years and having a lot of paying clients, and in fact, some of the big names, which we actually thought perhaps already could do this themselves, and realized actually there's a lot of value add we can bring. We just really know the data and the rules and the market structure inside and out. So we thought that what we bring to the table is that data quality understanding, interpretation of the data. If a client has a question on, oh, what's this field mean? What's a deferral? How does this work? We can always answer that. And as Niels noted, what we didn't have as much as Finborn is just the kind of raw infrastructure power behind us. Like we do obviously run production grade systems, but the scale you need for the CTP really requires someone like a Finborn who can bring that to bear.
So both complementary skills that sort of come together. And this sort of, for a better expression, intercompany bromance sort of develops into Bondtape. So talk to us about what Bondtape actually looks like and means. Should things go through? Whereabouts in the cycle are we at the moment? What does that become? How does it link together?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, our tagline is delivering a high quality consolidated tape, and that sounds almost trite, but the point is that we want the tape to be actionable and useful from day one. And day one is probably going to be sometime in the first quarter of next year. So where we are right now is that we're actually almost dead in the middle of the bidding process, and we'll probably get into this later, but there's two bids. There's the UK and there's the EU. And we're now at the stage that a victor is going to be selected sometime in probably late Q2, early Q3. And from then it's all guns blazing, productionizing it, building it, making sure everyone's ready. So what we think we offer is that because we've actually know the data so well, we not only know the data well, but offer a production service, commercial service people are paying for. We're very confident that time to market is one of our key strengths because we already do this. So what we think we can offer is something that's usable, actionable, cleaned up, ready to go from launch day. Maybe you'll add to that.
No, I think Ollie's right. I mean, just to take a step back, if I may, Toby, as you said at the outset, this has been talked about for a long time. And, bear in mind that there is a consolidated tape of sorts for bonds, and we're just talking about bonds over in the US called Trace that Shinra operate. That's been operating for approximately 20 or so years. They don't cover the full spectrum of bonds that are traded in the US. They don't cover US treasuries. And they only added they have 5 data sets. They only added different data sets at different times over the last 20 years. What both the EU and the UK expect is day one.
Everything's
on all of the trading venues in both jurisdictions or either jurisdiction to be covered day one.
Yeah.
So the point that Ollie was making is exactly right. People forget because, it's done so often and they think about real-time data. This is a different form of real-time data that both regulators are looking for, but they're looking for somebody who can hit the ground running with a proven track record that understands the data and can accommodate the various different regulatory frameworks that they each require. So that's a huge, big challenge. And what they've done, a bit like the fast and slow train analogy, the slow train has become a very fast train, but the destination is still in the same place.
Yeah.
So it's just getting there quicker. And that's, like Ollie said, second quarter, probably end of first quarter, second quarter next year. So the amount of work that has to be done between here and there is growing and growing every day. And the amount of time that you have to get it done is getting short. So that ability to make sure that people have faith that you can deliver the CTP day one is going to be a huge factor, we think, in making sure that it both is delivered and the policy after so many years under originally the Capital Markets Union and then the SIU as it's called in Europe, that can actually be delivered in a way that is going to be successful. That's the key risk at this stage.
You mentioned a couple of times there that there was ticks in the box that needed to happen, so to speak. So, you know, bang, bang, bang. Which is where you guys are confident that you have the sort of complementary skill sets to be able to do that. How does that decision actually about who wins this, who moves it further forward? How does that come about?
So in the first instance, like Ollie said, we're in the middle of the tender processes.
Yeah.
Both the FCA and ESMA are running. So there are certain things that we can talk about. But each of them has a slightly different emphasis in terms of, you know, their own individual policy perspectives. But the common thing between both of them is the fact that the technology backbone, the platform, the data quality side of it, that represents the majority of the marks that either regulator is actually awarding for the tenders. So having that technology has to be guaranteed. And all of the bidders, including ourselves, you know, this is a challenge for any of us. And we feel that from our side, the fact that we're doing a lot of this for a lot of large global clients gives us, you know,
an edge.
Gives us an advantage.
Yeah.
And the fact, as Ollie said, that the expertise that Propellant have developed over the last number of years, talking to their clients, getting that feedback, incorporating that feedback, means that you can deliver something that is actionable day one, and we can benefit from that. But I think the ticks in the box are making sure that you have the technology, making sure that you have the governance and the understanding of governance in terms of regulation, and we feel that our team do. And then lastly, and it's something we mentioned, I guess, Toby, being confident that you can deliver it at the delivery date that's expected. It's going to become an increasingly fraught, I think, factor that will figure in the decision-making process. It's not, you don't get marks for it, but that date.
There has to be the belief,
You know, they really have put markers in the ground, and they want to make sure that whoever is chosen is going to be able to deliver. And in between those two processes, where you're awarded it and where you have to get it up and running and operationalized, you also have to be authorized as a regulated institution. So making sure that you have the team behind it with the experience to ensure that they will be authorized and they will be regulated and approved to people is also another more subtle element of everything. It's like that they're granted. But, you know, running these operations is a complicated thing. Understanding your requirements and obligations is complicated as well. But once again, we feel that we have a team that are very experienced, both in terms of having been regulated or being regulated, and ensuring that we can bring that commercial nous, for want of a better phrase, to the project as well.
Well, I think back to, you know, the introductions that both of you gave, and then everything that I know about the sort of founding teams of both businesses at the same time as well. It's not short on institutional experience, is it, with all of that? So there's a lot of confidence around, you know, what and how and where you set things up. Ollie, I've spoken to a lot of people who come from a product background on this show over the years. And I think it's always fascinating that when people from product backgrounds look at problems, they assess challenges and they're looking at these sort of things and they're walking from customers' eyes and finding those problems within the thing. We've spoken about some of the risk already. Tell us a little bit about the overall challenges that people are facing, that we're facing around the consolidated tape, and how you guys propose to navigate that.
Yeah. I mean, to solve the problem that the consolidated tape is solving, so you'll know right now there's not the equivalent of trace in the US, which Neil alluded to. It's not like equities where just the trading landscape, the data is so commodified now, and it's really just about getting faster and faster. In the bond space, as you and your viewers are aware, the only way to kind of see the full market is to basically be a dealer who gets a lot of quotes, a lot of RFQs. So there's not kind of one neat solution which can tell you what's the price of this particular bond at this particular exchange, or kind of what's the depth of the book or anything like that. So the problem the consolidated tape is solving is just fragmented post-trade data, which means in practice fragmented liquidity, less efficient pricing, and I'd say generally just less ability to advance in technology in fixed income. Like fixed income compared to equities or FX is just way behind. So there's definitely, those are the problems, I think, from the business side. From the more regulatory sides, they're very keen. There's a couple of things they want to do. One is, Neil mentioned the SIU, the Savings and Investments Union. So there's they always throw around the number. I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's over €1 trillion in the EU, which is just sitting in low yielding savings accounts. And the EU basically wants to have that go to business. They kind of look at the US and think, well, we'd actually like to have more of that active participation from retail investors. So on the regulated side, there's this desire to get retail investors more involved, to basically unleash capital that's otherwise sitting there, less productive purposes. There's also a desire to make sure there is better, kind of more economical data available. So if you do have fragmentation, you might have to pay for multiple feeds. So again, that's where Consolidated comes in. You can just get one, which covers most of you. As for actually delivering the tape, I mean, a big part of it is we have these tenders to progress through. And as Neil mentioned, you don't just have to prove you can build the thing, you also have to prove you'll be authorized at the same time. So you have to make sure you're DORA compliant, you have all the ISO standards you should have, information security, resilience. This will be a target for hackers, so you have to make sure that's completely airtight. You also have to make sure that the data is usable. So it's the data quality angle. How will you, in real time in some cases, make sure that the information that's piped out can actually be understood by a range of sophistication? This isn't just for algo traders. This is actually for retail traders as well. This is the whole gamut of investors. So you have to make sure it's actually intelligible. And I think there is also just the element of, we mentioned a couple of times, just getting it done in the time frame. You really have to make sure that you work with the industry, and by which I mean not just the data users, but the data contributors, because trading venues and APAs they provide the data that's going to the CT, and they're having to do 2 consolidated tapes for the most part. New deferral regimes, both sides of the channel as well, have to make sure they're good on DORA. There's reasonable commercial basis rules coming in, which affects some people. There's so much at once, all at the same time frame, and getting enough attention and prioritization to then connect to 2 CTs. That's going to be a challenge that we want to make as easy as possible. So we have a design council where we have really strong attendance from contributors, and that way we can say, this is what we're thinking, does this work for you, and try to make sure that before we win the thing, that we have a delivery path that's going to work for the contributors.
Yeah, which is exactly what I was talking about with the product piece. For me, that's sort of, what I love about the industry over the last 10, 15 years is it's become much more collaborative around some of these sort of issues, probably actually since post-crisis. When it was very, I'm not sharing my homework to, beforehand, and everyone wants to have the advantage by being the first to innovate. Actually, I think the industry has recognised that cross-industry collaboration or collaboration across the industry with various different parties has actually helped to accelerate, solutions within it. I'm interested in what you mentioned there about earlier about the US having been in position for 20 years here, and obviously it being slightly different. I often think that even with T+1, another thing that's been happening a lot recently, we've got opportunities to learn from the US as we bring it over to UK and the EU at the same sort of time. But when you're talking through it and you're saying, right, okay, we've got to do this from day one on something that's been running for 20 years across the other side of it, why does that happen like that?
Yeah, no, I think, it sort of goes to what Ollie was talking about, and indeed yourself, Toby. There's a lot of change happening all of a sudden. Yeah. And a lot of the regulatory change that's happening is also in some ways looking to surf the wave of FinTech and IT improvements and, systems, cloud infrastructures. And I think, there is one of the lessons, if I can turn it on its head, some trace, is you can probably do it quicker, better. That's for sure. And that's one of the challenges, in a way, that the regulators have put out around the Consolidated. They just started from the assumption you could do it day one, and then they put the challenge on the bidders, which is fine. Yeah. I think the other thing to bear in mind, as Ollie was saying earlier on, there's also other key components that a lot of people, it's more nerdy type, techie type stuff. But these deferral changes mean that I think it's in the low 30s or something % of trades that come through currently are sort of not deferred. That will transform to about 80%.
Yeah. 96.
96%, even better. So what will happen is that it's not only that this will come along, but the actual information that it can provide will also increase as well. So it becomes much more valuable source of information. And I think, the other part of the challenge that I think the regulators have put out is to say, as Ollie said earlier on, they want the breadth of the market covered. So they want retail to, high-frequency traders. They want everybody covered in the same way. They want one system. They want one licensing system. They want it to be transparent. And that collaborative element, which also fed into the Bondtape project as well, both Finborn and Propellant Digital separately felt collaboration is better than trying to do it by yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Actually putting your heads together,
especially with so many
moving parts.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I think
complementary skill sets.
And also the goodwill that we built up, we're using through the design council. We're bringing people in who know what they're talking about to sort of challenge us as well and give us advice. So I think a lot of what Bondtape is doing is all about collaboration, and something that I feel very strongly about. Engagement is one thing, collaboration is a different thing. Engagement, you're just telling people. Collaboration means you're learning from each other and improve it. And I think that's something that ethos-wise has marked us out and has encouraged, market participants to work quite closely with us. And that's what we want to continue to do, assuming we are selected for one or both. That's what we want to continue to do and drive. And the continual improvement, I think, is something that we see that's going to be a virtuous circle, in the sense that both regulators, ESMA and the FCA, are focusing on data and using that for evidence-driven policy. So the data that we're going to produce will hopefully feed into the policy, which will sharpen that up, which will then come back into improving what the CTP expectations are. So there is an element of chicken and egg going on here, but equally, if they can create a farm where the chickens and eggs are all produced in one place, we can move it together. Probably that doesn't that analogy. But what you need to do is you need to get a certain degree of alignment between the different players, I guess, Toby.
Yeah.
So that, everyone feels that they're all learning off each other. The collaboration is improving things. Everyone sees the benefit of the ecosystem.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we want to continue to advocate and encourage as much as possible.
And as, you mentioned MiFID a couple of times before, MiFID 2 and such like, and we saw we saw solutions come into difficult, to a difficult problem in that sort of area, and people moved on. But what it also did was create this sort of secondary ecosystem. There were companies out there who were spinning out products. There were companies that arrived that specialised in that. Every regulation I've seen over the last 20 years has come with a raft of new entrants into the industry and all that sort of thing. It feels like this is another opportunity to see something similar happen in here. How does that all work out, and what does that look like, do you think?
Yeah, that's a great question, and definitely agree with your point that there's this RegTech industry that builds out of it. There's been a lot of actually innovation. People just look sometimes at regulation as, it's just another thing to comply with, but actually there is a lot of positive, I'd say, actual innovation coming from some of it. And
definitely,
the Consolidated tape is a great example. Both regulators are really encouraging this tape to be built on by a fintech ecosystem. So once you have a clean, reasonably priced feed of fixed income data, which didn't exist before, you can just think of all the things you can build on top of that. You can make indices, you can inform evaluated pricing with actual done trades rather than more model-based. You can create new TCA tools, transaction cost analysis. You can build a new retail trading platform, maybe comparing different bonds with savings accounts, getting more involved there. There's many things you can do, and the regulators want the licensing to be simple enough that you don't already have to be a giant player to be able to make use of it. If you're just a young startup who wants to try build something with it, you'll be able to do that. So you can really, this isn't just innovation that's going to come isn't about helping your compliance with the rules. Is actually going to be, let's build entirely new data products and entirely new analytics services.
Which becomes a great opportunity as well, because I was thinking, if you go back to your previous companies in Goldman's and UBS, one of the issues around Goldman's and UBS and innovation of companies who are looking to break into that has been procurement processes that quite frankly strangle the innovation at source. You haven't got the time, and that's understandable because of all the necessary due diligence that needs to go on through it. You can't click your fingers and have that risk that's involved in it. But when you're looking at subjects such as this, it opens it up and democratizes the whole arena a little bit more, right? And that creates opportunity.
But I think in those cases, Toby, you have to make sure that you have the right framework for
absolutely
encourage it.
Yeah.
So there is the concern which the regulators are trying to incorporate into the tenders around the fact that this will be a monopoly. In both cases. But the quid pro quo there is while there's an obligation for all of the data venues to contribute, they have to contribute to the CTP. There's no obligation on anyone to buy it.
Yeah.
So it's a one-way street into the CTP, but nobody has to buy it on the CTP output. So creating the right environment and encouraging, to take what you were saying, encouraging people to use it, to see the benefit of it, and to see the quality of it. I think that's something that we think is key, and that's why we've put a lot of the hard work in. I think the other thing, as Ollie said, is that making sure that you have open APIs to support an ecosystem that can develop, allows people to experiment. That's all part of the componentry that we think is going to be important for the CTP. And I think moving forward, encouraging, through mechanisms like the Design Council, which we intend to continue our reform of the Design Council, and have very open, transparent operations for the CTP. We have to convince people that what we've created is a golden standard, that they understand it, that they can use it, as Ollie said earlier on, in terms of usability. And it's also something that people have faith in, because once again, that's going to reinforce the whole CTP project throughout the UK and in Europe as well.
And let's look forward and assume the right way that the Bondtape is selected. What does that look like moving further forward? What happens next?
Well, at the start, we'd know sometime, let's just say around September, for argument's sake. Really, we've started building parts of it already. I don't think you can actually wait until you find out if you've won. You just won't. You won't meet the deadlines. And really, it'll be a sprint to make sure we finish building the infrastructure, work with data contributors to make sure they're integrated, work with data users to produce documentation. I think actually start the sales process. So actually give out documents, licenses to say, this is what it's going to cost, this is the framework. And but one thing which Neil alluded to earlier, which I actually think is kind of the real story here, is the change in the deferral regime. So this gets a bit technical, but right now, Neil mentioned one stat on the number of trades. If you're looking at, I think, pre-corporate bonds, about 15% of volumes are published in real time. With the new deferral regimes, both sides of the channel, it goes up to about 50%. So that's huge. And I think if that weren't happening, the CT's value would be a lot less. So there's also the preparation you have to do is make sure that the new deferral regime comes in smoothly. That's not the CT's responsibility, but it's working with the contributors to help them there. And ultimately, there will be a lot of engagement with the industry to say, this is what's coming, this is how you'll use it, this is how you should subscribe, these are the different channels. I think it's basically going to be, I said earlier, a sprint to build it, get authorized, and make sure the industry is ready, both sides in terms of consumer and contributor.
So you've got busy times coming up. Neil, anything you'd add to all of that about the vision for Bondtape?
I think the vision that we have for it is to be extremely collaborative, extremely transparent. And, to give an example, just to build on that, we partnered with AWS on this to make sure that it's cloud-based.
Yeah.
And to provide that possibility, both in terms of ingestion, as we call it, and distribution. But I think, our approach has always been very collaborative. Our commitment has always been very open. So the Bondtape project and the CTP project fit very neatly into all of those things. I think the last thing that I would say is that what Bondtape wants to do is do what it says in the can. We'll produce bond data in a tape format. We're not going to be a value-add service. We don't want to be a value-add service. We don't want to create confusion in the market. What we want to do is the consolidated tape well. We want to do it in a way that people have faith in, and will work with us to improve. And we want also to support the regulatory drive that there is to use the data in terms of policy making as well, because we think that that's a very important component of what the tape will contribute. And indeed, I think, help the overall ecosystem develop in terms of, tertiary companies, FinTechs and like types that can use the data and develop the products that Ollie talked about, but also the institutional users, the buy and the sell side, and indeed encourage, retail visibility of that's happening in the bond market, because that's been, as Ollie said earlier on, that's sort of been missing, and that's where this thing started. So we've tried to pair it back to the bare essentials, do the real time, do the historic data very, very well, build up, faith and commitment and credibility, and then use that to develop the tape going forward through the 5-year license, and make sure that we're continually improving it, continually offering better service, and continually making sure that we're supporting the fixed income markets in those jurisdictions.
I smiled as you said that because I'm a big believer in simplicity. I'm a big believer in doing the basics brilliantly, and world-class basics equals world-class return.
Yeah.
And I think actually if you look at the two companies behind that, they're great exponents of what's happened so far, and making sure that that's where the success has come to date. So an exciting couple of months ahead of you, a busy couple of months ahead of both of you as well.
Yeah.
So you mentioned collaborations at the core of all of this. Let's finish with that. People who are watching this at the moment, this isn't a unique category. It's a fairly all-encompassing thing. Everyone's interested in this particular play, and it's important to every single business who's in the space. So people who are listening want to find out more, want to get involved, want to help, want to be part of the council, the design, etc., etc. What's the best way to get in touch with you guys?
Well, I think, on LinkedIn, or email us at info@bondtape.org. We can make sure this is all available. We recently posted on LinkedIn that we want to keep expanding our design council membership. It's an open membership. It's non-committal. It's not taken as an endorsement. It's just taken as I would like to help shape the tape. So I'd say getting involved with the design council is probably the best route, and just following us on LinkedIn. As Neil, I think, mentioned earlier, we do really take pride in doing our job properly and knowing the data. I mean, Finborn have published so many reports on data quality. Propellant is used by the ICMA, as Finborn is used by AFML to produce reports. So we really do care about this. We take great pride in it, and we just want to deliver something that's high quality. And if you want to get involved, info@bondtape.org, follow us on LinkedIn, and we want to invite you. Neil?
And our website.
And our website.
So we have bondtape.org is our website as well. So that has all of the reports that Ollie talked about.
Yeah.
You can see over the last several years that there's been a commitment on both companies' sides to, improving the understanding as to what problem we're trying to solve, and we think we understand the problem we're trying to solve, as we explained. But please look at the website. Please reach out to us, like Ollie said, at the info email address. You can reach out to us directly at Propellant or Finborn as well. We want to encourage more participation. We want to understand more what people want so that we can make sure that we do it. But we want to do the core thing well and deliver it appropriately and properly, and make sure that that's successful, because that's the first step, we think, in the next stage of the process. So,
sorry to interrupt you. I do want to say one more thing. Actually, do speak to your trading desk, because you say everyone knows it's coming. I don't think everyone actually believes it's going to happen. It is happening. So definitely speak to your traders. Tell them about this change in transparency. Like, a lot of people are actually a bit fearful of what's this mean to me. But if you look at what happened with Trace, you just see tighter spreads, you see more efficient pricing, you see new ways of trading. So definitely, I think there's a lot more upsides than potential risks here for everyone involved. Yeah,
I love the fact you said that, because I do believe that every single time you have one of these major industry changes, you have people in there who are caught with when the tide goes out, you see who's not wearing the swimming shorts, right? And this is exactly that same sort of opportunity, and you have this mad rush afterwards. It was exactly the same with MiFID, where you saw a rush to hire, a rush to do everything at the last minute, and that became very difficult for certain players in it. So I absolutely agree with you. Getting ahead of these sort of things when they're coming is absolutely imperative, and the earlier you can start, the better you get into it. So, listen, fascinating. Thank you both for coming in and talking about sharing it with us. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you all for watching. We'll see you soon on the next episode of FinTech Focus TV. Thanks a lot.